You might grab your Bibles and open back up to Psalm 34, where Brother Creighton read for us. And we'll spend our time in study from a passage from there, from an idea that we see there. I do not have a Mother's Day lesson prepared, except for the fact that the lesson that I prepared will be preached on Mother's Day. So, all the visitors here, I am glad you are here. I didn't forget it was Mother's Day, but Lydia may tell you that I just don't do a very good job thinking about it. That's it. And I've been thinking about other things. So, what I want to do, I want you to look at Psalm 34 and verse 7. I have a friend, Stephen Russell, who several months ago preached a sermon on the topic that shows up in verse 7. And it struck me in a way that I've been studying the Bible basically for my whole life, or people have been teaching me the Bible. And there's a theme in the Bible that I have wondered about and just not been able to do a lot of investigation about. And he helped me through that. And I want to share it with you today. This is just an overflow of something that I have learned, and it just got me excited about looking at the scripture and pondering on this. In Psalm 34 and verse 7, Asaph says, no, not Asaph, David, when he was with Abimelech. This lesson is going great. Come back, visitors, it gets even better. Okay, all right. He says, the angel of the Lord, or the angel of Yahweh, encamps around those who fear him and rescues them. Now, the phrase, the angel of the Lord, or the angel of Yahweh, depending on the translation that you're using, or the angel of Jehovah, shows up a lot in the scripture. And I'm just going to try to give you a sampling of that in just a moment. But sometimes we have questions about the angel of the Lord. And basically, all I've been able to say is, well, here's some things that are there, and here's some things that we know, and maybe here's some things that we don't. And I think all of that, I don't think anything that I have said about that, I don't think I've tried to overstep. But I think maybe we can say more about this person that we see, the angel of the Lord, the angel of Yahweh in the Old Testament scriptures. If you flip over to Psalm 35, notice also there in verse 5, Psalm 35, verse 5, let them be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of Yahweh, or the angel of the Lord, driving them on. And I want you to see that just as we get started. Chapter 34, verse 7, David celebrates the fact that the angel of Yahweh is protection, that he is a refuge. And Psalm 35 and verse 5, David celebrates the fact that the angel of the Lord is the means by which judgment comes on the wicked. He is a refuge and he is wrathful. And I think we should see that. Now, the first thing that I want to tell you is that the angel of the Lord shows up a lot in the Old Testament. He appears many times. Now, just take a breath, because all the verses I put on the screen are going to make you very concerned, okay? It's a lot. I'm not going to read every one of them. We're going to summarize most of them, but just brace yourself, because it might look like I'm going to preach for an hour on motherhood. We have all the visitors here. We want to make the best of it. So I'm going to fill up the screen with verses, and the benefit of this is that you can just see just a sampling of what's in the Old Testament. So I want to start with the first place that we see the angel of the Lord mentioned. And interestingly to me, it is in Genesis 16 and verse 7. And you're good Bible students, so you know right in the section where that is primarily having to do with Hagar and Ishmael. And in 16 and verse 7, the text tells us that the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. Now, we're going to have more to say about that, but isn't it interesting? It's interesting to me that the first time that we see the angel of the Lord mentioned is when Hagar has been driven from her home because of Sarah, her mistress or her owner, and the way that she has treated her. If you'll flip over to chapter 21, the next time that we see them is the angel of the Lord is in 21 and verse 17. And this is Hagar again, who has fled with her child Ishmael. And she basically has given up and is ready to die. And in verse 17, then God heard the voice of the boy crying, and the angel of God, I take that to be the same as the angel of the Lord, called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. So both occasions where he first appears in Genesis are to do with Hagar and Ishmael, especially in their distress, being driven away from the family of Abraham. But there's more. In Genesis chapter 22, and you know this account, God tells Abraham to take his son, his only son, the son whom he loves, and to take him on to Mount Moriah, and there he is to offer him as a sacrifice. Now, if I was to ask you who stopped Abraham from killing Isaac, I would have said God stopped it. But I want you to look at what it says in chapter 22 and verse 11. But the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham from heaven and said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not stretch out your hand against the boy, and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, from me. Now, who's speaking here? The angel of the Lord. And when he stops Abraham, he says, Now I know that you fear God, because you haven't withheld Isaac from me. It's interesting, isn't it? Some layering there. All right, now, in Genesis 24 and verse 7, this is Abraham sending out his servant. No, this is not Abraham. This is Jacob. This is Abraham sending out his servant to find a wife for Isaac. And this is the prayer there. Yahweh, the God of heaven, this is verse 7, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kin, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, To your seed I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. Now, in chapter 31, Jacob, this is Isaac's son, has been working for Laban. And in chapter 31 and verse 11, the angel of God, take that to be the same person, the angel of the Lord, said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, Here I am. And notice in verse 12 and 13, he said, Lift up now your eyes and see all the male goats which are mating, or striped, speckled, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. Verse 13, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, and return to the land of your kin. Just want you to look at that for a second. We'll come back and make mention of this. But the angel of God speaks to him, and when he tells him to leave, he says, I am the God of Bethel. I am the God of Bethel. Pretty interesting. Now, I believe, and I may have missed one, but I believe that is all the explicit Genesis references. Now, there are other places we will talk about in a few minutes, but that's all of the specific ones that are mentioned in Genesis. But then we come to the book of Exodus, and here things get even deeper. In Exodus chapter 3, this is Moses, and he's in the wilderness, and he's taking care of those sheep, and he sees the burning bush. And who is it that speaks to Moses from the burning bush? I wish Brother Kerry was here. I might have him read the passage again. That deep voice. But who spoke? It was not Kerry, and it was not. Notice what it says. Verse 2. And the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was not burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So you've got the angel of the Lord speaking to him, right? And then you come down to verse 6. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. You've got Yahweh calling out to him from the bush, and it kind of just shifts from the angel of Yahweh over to Yahweh speaking from him and of him. And the interesting thing here is this is the first time that we have a description of God's personal name, Yahweh, and it's the angel of the Lord that calls to Moses from the bush. Now in chapter 14 and verse 19, here they have left Egypt. They've left Egypt and they're making preparation. And verse 19 says, Then the angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. Here, the angel of God is pictured as being in that cloud that was going on ahead of them to guide them, and now it moves behind them to create the separation between them and the Egyptians. Now, let's go to chapter 23. Chapter 23. And look at verse 20. Behold, this is as they receive the Ten Commandments, they're about to go into the land. At least that's the ideal. They're going to leave Sinai and go into the land. He says, behold, I am going to send an angel before you to keep you along the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Keep watch of yourself before him and listen to his voice. Do not be rebellious toward him, for he will not pardon your transgression, since my name is in him. But if you truly listen to his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your adversaries and to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. You see what he's saying there? Look at verse 23. He says, my angel will go before you into the land, and then the very last phrase there, and I will annihilate them. There's a lot of layering over. If you listen to him, if you listen to me, he will go in, I will annihilate them. You see how all of that is layering over itself. Now, in chapter 32, this is the last mention, and this one raises questions for me, and I think we can wrestle with this. In chapter 32, this is right after the sin of them having made the golden calf. And in verse 34 of Exodus 32, he says, but now go, guide the people where I told you, behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I will punish them for their sin. Now, what's interesting here is Moses is going to say, we can't go without you. But God had already promised to send his angel with him. So maybe that raises some questions that we'll come back to. Just a few that I want to make mention of. Balaam was on his way to prophesy for Balak. And it was the angel of the Lord that stood in the way of the donkey. That when the donkey sat down and Balaam got mad, the angel of the Lord is the one who spoke there. There are some mentions in the book of Judges, and we'll come back to a couple of these. In Judges 2, the angel of the Lord speaks and says that they have rejected him and that he's going to bring judgment upon them. In fact, in that Judges account, he says, I'm the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt. This is the angel of the Lord speaking. I'm the one who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. You have rejected me. Now I'm going to hand you over to your enemies. And there's other places as well with regards to Gideon and things like that. One of the key ones, we'll mention this in just a second, is where the angel in Judges 13 meets with Samson's parents. I do want to flip over there for just a second. You can just follow along if you want. In Judges 13 and verse 3, the angel of Yahweh appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall be with child and give birth to a son. Now, that's going to be significant as we go. I want you to just notice verse 22, and maybe this will help. The angel of the Lord, verse 21, didn't appear to them again. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of Yahweh. So Manoah said to his wife, we will surely die, for we have seen God. We have seen God. Now, in 2 Samuel 24, David had taken the census. Do you remember that? The census that he was not supposed to take. And God comes in judgment against David. And when we come to 2 Samuel 24 and verse 16, the angel sent forth his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it. And Yahweh relented of the calamity and said, the angel who destroyed the people, it is enough. Now relax your hand. And the angel of Yahweh was by the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. So the angel of the Lord is the one who's carrying out the mission of punishing Judah for Israel's sin. Elijah, right after the Mount Carmel scene, is going to flee because Jezebel doesn't change her mind. He is going to head down south to a place called Beersheba. When he gets to Beersheba, he's going to stop, and the angel of the Lord is going to wake him up and tell him to go all the way down to Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, and he says, you need to be ready because it's a long journey and you've got to go. The angel of the Lord speaks to him there. In 2 Kings 1 and verse 3, the angel of the Lord speaks to Elijah and says, you go speak to the messengers of the king of Samaria, and you ask them why they are turning away from me to worship Baal. Another key one that you'll remember is in chapter 19 of 2 Kings and verse 35. It's the angel of the Lord that goes and kills 185,000 Assyrians in one night. In the Psalms, we mentioned a couple of places where that shows up. In Isaiah 37, I know I'm running through these now because time is running away. In Isaiah 37, there's another reference to the killing of the 185,000 by the angel of the Lord. Now, I do want to flip over to Isaiah 63 right quick. Isaiah 63 and verse 9. Listen to this. In all their distress, this is a recalling of the history of the people coming through the wilderness. In all their distress, he was distressed, and the angel of his presence saved them. Angel of his presence. Think about that. In his love and in his mercy, he redeemed them, and he lifted them and carried them all the ancient days. Who does that sound like? Sounds like what God did. Sounds like what God did in bringing them up out of Egypt. And then in Zechariah, the book of Zechariah, there's two references, and I really think that the whole conversation from Zechariah 1 through chapter 3 kind of seems to be a conversation with the angel of the Lord. In Zechariah 1 and verse 11, so they answered the angel of Yahweh, the angel of the Lord, who was standing among the myrtle trees and said, we have patrolled the earth, and behold, all the earth is sitting still and quiet. So here you have this introduction to the angel of the Lord. And in chapter 3 and verse 1, then he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of Yahweh, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. So here you have the high priest standing right in front of the angel of Yahweh, and then right beside him is Satan ready to make an accusation. Okay, now, all that is to say is that when we look through the Old Testament scriptures and we look at the occasions where the angel of the Lord shows up, these are not nothing moments. There are a lot of significant times where he shows up. And maybe we would say he's pretty significant. Now, what I want you to see is that there are some basic fundamental things that I think we can say. First of all, I think we can say that the angel of the Lord is, in fact, Yahweh. He is, in fact, the Lord in some meaningful sense. I'm flipping back to Genesis 16. This is the conversation that the angel of the Lord has with Hagar. And in Genesis chapter 16 and verse 7, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness and by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's servant woman, where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. Then the angel of the Lord, the angel of Yahweh, said to her, return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hands. Moreover, the angel of Yahweh said to her, I will greatly multiply your seed so that they will be too many to be counted. Now, who makes the promise that Hagar's seed is going to be multiplied? Wouldn't you have said God? I think you would have. And I think that would have been appropriate. In verse 13, I want you to notice that this is not Hagar saying who she talked to. This is Moses, by inspiration of the Holy Spirit, writing down who she spoke to. Look at verse 13. Then she called the name of Yahweh, who spoke to her. You are a God who sees, for if she said, have I remained alive here after seeing him? Do you see that? Moses is saying she had spoken to Yahweh. The text tells us it was the angel of Yahweh. Yes. Yes, it was. All right. Now, in chapter 22 and verse 11, when Abraham was offering Isaac, it's the angel of Yahweh that stops him. We already made mention of verse 12. You have not withheld him from me. Now look at verse 15. Then the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from Abraham and said, by myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this thing and not spared your son, your only one. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have listened to my voice. In Exodus chapter 2 or 3, we already talked about this, that the text switches from calling him the angel of the Lord just to referring to him as God, and he introduces his name. We already made mention of Judges chapter 2. I'll flip over there for just a second. I know this is a lot of turning, but I'm getting excited about it, so just hold on. It's coming. Judges chapter 2, the angel of Yahweh came up from Gilgal to Bochum, and he said, I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land which I swore to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. Who's saying this? Angel of the Lord. I did this. I did this. So it happened, verse 4, when the angel of Yahweh spoke these words to all the sons of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept. So can we say basically, fundamentally, that he is Yahweh? The second thing I want to see is that he is a distinct person. There is something distinct here that we need to recognize. In Genesis 16 again, where this is the first time we're introduced to him, you have her saying, she called the name of Yahweh, you are God who sees, for she said, have I remained alive here after seeing him? There was something about being able to see him that made him distinct from the fact that you couldn't see God and live. There was that recognition. She was surprised she was able to live after having seen him. In 2 Samuel 24, this is in the case with regards to the judgment that came on David. You may remember as we read that the Lord speaks to the angel of the Lord and says, okay, that's enough on the judgment. It's time to restrain yourself. So there's something distinct here. In Zechariah 1, 12 and 13, the angel of the Lord responds to the Lord to talk about what the horsemen are doing as they patrol the earth. So you've got Hagar surprised that she was able to see him, the Lord speaking to the angel of the Lord, and then the angel of the Lord speaking to the Lord. So there's something going on here. All right? Now, okay, got a few more. Now, we can imply some other sightings. In Genesis 18, do you remember the occasion where those visitors come to stay with Abraham? I would have said that's a place where I would see the name, the angel of the Lord. It's actually not. The phrase angel of the Lord is not used. But we know that he thinks they are angels, and that one of them begins to speak as the Lord. And you can take time to look at that. Very interesting. In chapter 31, when he's talking to Jacob, he refers to himself as the God of Bethel. Bethel means house of God. You remember Jacob slept on the stone, and he sees the angels ascending and descending. And what the angel of the Lord says in Genesis 31 is that you're going to go back because I am the God that you made an oath to at Bethel. Wow. All right. In chapter 32, Jacob wrestles with who he thinks is a man, who we find out he's actually wrestling with God. And Hosea, in his prophecy, says that Jacob was actually wrestling with an angel. You see that? The phrase angel of the Lord is not used, but Jacob thinks he's a man. He's declared to be God, and then Hosea says he was an angel. Wow. Joshua chapter 5. This is where the angel, I take it to be an angel, appears to Joshua, and he says, I am the commander of the armies of the Lord of hosts. And you remember Joshua's question? Are you on our side or are you on their side? And he says, I'm the commander of the Lord's army. Right? It wasn't a matter of whose side he was on, it's whether or not you were on his side. I take that to be one of those moments. In Daniel chapter 3, you have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown into the fiery furnace. And they look down and they say, didn't we just throw 3 people down there? And they say, yes. And they say, but there's one in there like the sons of the gods. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, references that, translate that as the angel of God. Now, I don't know that that's the right translation, but it seems to me that they see a connection there, and I don't think that's off. And there are other places. Now, let me say this. Not only can we imply other sightings, but he appears as a man. Now, I want to be careful here. I do not think that this is what we would call an incarnation. I don't know that he is coming in the flesh, but he looks like it. Genesis 18, when he appears to Abraham. Chapter 32, when he wrestles with Jacob. Joshua 5, when he looks like an army commander. And then Daniel 3, when he's in the fiery furnace. He is called Wonderful. In Judges chapter 13, when he appears to Samson's mom and dad. That's my mother's name. When he appears to her mom. Samson's mom. Okay. They call him Wonderful. Now, doesn't that sound kind of like the language in Isaiah 9, where there would be one who was born who would be called Wonderful Counselor? He is an intercessor. If you go back and look at those Zechariah passages, especially Zechariah chapter 3, this is a great one to look at in more detail. Joshua, the high priest, is standing there in filthy garments. Who can stand in the presence of God in filthy garments? Nobody. Satan is saying that about Joshua. Here's the high priest supposed to be standing in the presence of the angel of the Lord, and he's wearing filthy garments. And you know what the angel of Yahweh does? He pleads for him and says, let's take off those filthy garments and let's put on clean garments so that he can stand before me. Now, is that sounding familiar? I think that we could say that there are some things here that are really interesting since we know what happens in the New Testament. Let me tell you this. Jewish people in the intertestamental period, between the end of Malachi and when people started writing New Testament scripture, had already understood that there was something more complicated going on with God in the Old Testament than just a singular person and a singular being. So sometimes we talk about the Trinity and we talk about Father, Son, and Spirit. But let me tell you that before Jesus walked on the earth, Jewish people were already wrestling with a concept that we call 2 powers in heaven. There are books written about this, scholarly books written about this Jewish idea of 2 powers in heaven. Do you know when that belief went away? After Jesus. Jewish scholars and leaders they labeled that as heresy so that they didn't have to wrestle with the things that Christians were claiming about Jesus. You can go back to their scholarly works 2,000 years ago, and you can find people talking about there's something complicated going on here. And then they quit talking about that after the first century because they didn't want to give any credibility to Jesus. Now, Jewish people were already wrestling with that, but they had to get rid of all that talk after Jesus because Jesus fits so many of those observations. But I think we can say even more about it than that. I think we can be more explicit. Notice with me a few passages. Flip to the book of Acts. And this is in Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7. And in verse 30, this is Stephen's speech. And here it says, after 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai in the flame of a burning bush. When Moses saw it, he was marveling at the sight. As he approached to look more closely, there came the voice of the Lord. I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Moses trembled with fear and would not dare to look. But the Lord said to him, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. I have surely seen the oppression of my people in Egypt, and have heard their groans, and I have come down to deliver them. Come now, and I will send you to Egypt. This Moses, whom they disowned, saying, who made you ruler and a judge, is the one whom God sent to be both a ruler and a deliverer with the help of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. This man led them out, doing wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness for 40 years. This is the Moses who God said to the sons of Israel, God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. This is the one in the congregation of the wilderness, was with the angel who was speaking to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, the one who received living oracles to pass on to you. I want you to note something here. The angel is mentioned 3 times in this text. The angel is mentioned as the one who appeared to him in the burning bush. Pretty big. The angel is the one mentioned to him as the one who is going to take them out of Egypt. And the angel is mentioned as the one who delivered to them the words on Mount Sinai. Now, who would you have put in all 3 of those categories? Burning bush, leading them out of Egypt, talking to them on Mount Sinai. God, 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 right? So, what you have here is the angel is doing all of that. Now, I want you to, very quickly, I'm just flipping back right quick. This is in, I got to find it, Numbers chapter 20 and verse 16. This is still in the context of all of that. 20 verse 16. So we cried out to Yahweh. This is Israel talking to Edom. We cried out to Yahweh, and he heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us out from Egypt. Now behold, we are at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. You see that? Stephen says an angel was with Moses bringing them up out of Egypt. The people in Numbers 20 say that God sent an angel to bring us up out of Egypt. All right, we're about to tie it all together. Hold on. Go to Judges 5. Not Judges, Jude 5. Jude 5. Jude verse 5. Now I want to remind you, Jude says, though you know all things, that Jesus, having once saved a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. Who led them out of Egypt? God did. Who led them out of Egypt? The angel of the Lord did. Who led them out of Egypt? Jude says, Jesus did. You see what's happening here? I think what we are seeing is that there are so many layers connecting this, that the angel of the Lord is a pre-incarnate relationship to Jesus. I think we are talking to the Son. I think we're talking to the Word as we go all the way through the Old Testament. Now, one last passage. One last passage. In Matthew 17. Matthew 17. I had never thought of this with regards to this moment until this time. And I want you to just consider this with me. In Matthew 17, there's Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. And who appears with him? Moses and Elijah. Now, Moses and Elijah were 2 of the people who had seen the angel of the Lord in reference to Mount Sinai. The angel of the Lord had been delivering the words to Moses, and Elijah was the one who he motivated to keep going to Mount Sinai, where he was going to have that fasting period. It seems to me that Jesus, in his transfiguration, is allowing Moses and Elijah again to see the angel of the Lord. Here he is opening up, at least to some degree, the revelation of his glory, so that Moses and Elijah on another mountain see the angel of the Lord again. Who else is there? Peter, and James, and John. And they see Jesus transfigured. They see the angel of the Lord right there before him. I think that what we have in the Old Testament scriptures is evidence that Jesus was at work all along prior to his incarnation. So when somebody says that the New Testament is just kind of adding Jesus on to the story, no. He's all through it. He's there all over the place. Sometimes specifically mentioned, sometimes we just imply that, but we see the angel of the Lord all the way through And so we have Yahweh, we have the angel of Yahweh, and they are one, and they are distinct. And I think this is just one more way that we can see that the whole Bible is pointing to Jesus. The whole Bible is pointing to Jesus. It's not just that there were shadows. It's not just that they were previews. It's that he is there all along as a refuge and as a wrathful judge. And so we see the fullness of that in the New Testament. Well, thank you so much for your kind attention. I'm just beginning to be able to consider some of those passages, and I would be happy to sit down and talk with you about that. Now, maybe as we go through all of that, you say, well, what about these settings in which he's showing up in? What does that teach us about God? What does that teach us about Jesus? Those are great questions, and we want to continue to wrestle with those sorts of things. I'm convinced that Jesus was God in the flesh, that he was Emmanuel, God with us, and that if we want to rightly respond to God, we must rightly respond to the Son. We must rightly respond to Jesus. And he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And if we want to receive the salvation that he offers, we must bend the knee in obedience and yield our allegiance to him. And if we can help you as you desire to do that, won't you come while we stand and while we sing?
Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact